John Barnes went from being football's biggest victim of racism to becoming someone accused of being homophobic and anti-Semitic himself. How does a man who gracefully fought racism his entire playing career end up making controversial statements about other minorities? This is the uncomfortable truth about one of England's most complicated football legends, whose journey from hero to controversialist reveals the dangerous limits of good intentions without proper understanding. Born in Kingston, Jamaica in 1963, Barnes grew up on Jamaica's largest military base with his Trinidad father and Jamaican mother. This disciplined military environment instilled something most black players of his era lacked: unshakable self-worth and status. His father was a senior military officer, creating a household where respect and hierarchy were fundamental values. The family lived what Barnes describes as a disciplined life that gave him a powerful sense of superiority long before he encountered Britain's racial hierarchies. When his family moved to London when he was 12, Barnes carried this psychological armour with him into English football, where it would prove absolutely crucial for his survival and success. The young Barnes's talent was immediately obvious to scouts watching local matches. After being spotted playing for Sudbury Court, Watford manager Graham Taylor signed him for just a set of kits in 1981. This humble beginning would launch one of the most successful careers in English football history. Over 6 years at Watford, he scored 65 goals in 233 appearances, transforming from unknown teenager into one of England's most exciting prospects. His pace, skill, and ability to beat defenders made him a nightmare for opposing teams. His performances consistently caught the attention of bigger clubs, and in 1987, Liverpool paid £900,000 for his signature, making him their first high-profile black player at Anfield. At Liverpool, Barnes became part of football folklore during the club's golden era. Playing alongside legends like Peter Beardsley, John Aldridge, and Ian Rush, he formed one of the most devastating attacking combinations in Liverpool's rich history. The team's fluid attacking style perfectly suited Barnes's natural abilities, allowing him to drift wide, cut inside, and create havoc for defenders. His trophy cabinet filled quickly with 2 First Division titles, 2 FA Cups, and a League Cup during his 10 seasons at the club. Individual recognition followed with the PFA Player of the Year award in 1988 and the Football Writers Association Footballer of the Year award twice, in 1988 and 1990. By retirement, he had earned 79 England caps, then a record for a black player, representing his country at major tournaments and becoming a household name across Britain. But this success came at a brutal personal cost that most fans never fully understood. Barnes faced constant racist abuse throughout his career, and this wasn't limited to opposing fans in distant stadiums. Bananas were thrown at him regularly at grounds across England, not just at high-profile matches, but every single week he played. The monkey chants were relentless, the racist songs never stopped, and the hatred was palpable wherever he went. Fellow black player Cyril Regis once joked that if he collected all the bananas thrown at him, he could have opened a corner shop, highlighting just how common this abuse had become in English football. The abuse wasn't limited to terraces either. Barnes experienced racism from opposition players during matches, and shockingly, even from his own teammates in training and social situations. This created an environment where he was constantly surrounded by hostility, yet somehow had to maintain his performance levels and professional demeanour. Most players would have cracked under this pressure, but Barnes had something different. The key difference was Barnes's psychological response to this treatment. Unlike other black players who internalised the hatred and suffered long-term psychological damage, Barnes simply didn't let it bother him on an emotional level. He felt justifiably superior to his abusers because of his strong upbringing and military discipline instilled by his family. This emotional detachment protected his mental health, but also created a clinical, almost academic approach to analysing racism. that would later become both his greatest intellectual strength and his most dangerous weakness when dealing with other forms of prejudice. The moment that defined Barnes's public image happened on February 21st, 1988, during a Merseyside derby at Goodison Park. When Everton fans threw a banana at him while chanting "Everton are white," Barnes casually backheeled the fruit away without breaking stride or showing any emotional reaction. The photograph became one of the most iconic images in English football history, symbolising graceful defiance against overt bigotry. Everton's chairman immediately branded the perpetrators scum, and the incident sparked nationwide conversation about racism in sport, making Barnes an instant symbol of anti-racism resistance. But here's what makes this story truly fascinating. Barnes doesn't even remember doing it. For him, it was just another routine response to depressingly familiar abuse that happened weekly. He stated multiple times that bananas were thrown on fields every day during his early career, including less publicised matches when he played for Watford. This casual dismissal of his most famous moment reveals everything about his detached mindset and clinical approach to analysing prejudice. This incident created the foundation myth of John Barnes, the anti-racism icon, a symbol that would follow him for decades. But Barnes himself has spent years trying to dismantle this very myth that made him famous. He argues that focusing on visible acts of racism like banana throwing allows society to ignore far more dangerous systemic issues that affect millions of people daily. This frustration with symbolic anti-racism is where his revolutionary concept of invisible banana skins was born. If you're finding this story fascinating, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into football's most complex figures. Barnes calls these subtle prejudices invisible banana skins. The woman clutching her handbag when black men approach, the shopkeeper watching black teenagers with extra suspicion, the unconscious assumptions made in job interviews, the subtle ways people's voices change when speaking to minorities. He argues these unspoken behaviours reflect deep-seated societal conditioning that's been centuries in the making and represents the true face of modern racism that's far more damaging than obvious stadium abuse because it's everywhere and affects every aspect of life. After retiring in 1999, following brief spells at Newcastle United and Charlton Athletic, plus unsuccessful managerial roles at Celtic, Jamaica and Tranmere Rovers, Barnes deliberately chose an unconventional path. Rather than disappearing into coaching obscurity like most retired players, he maintained public relevance through strategic appearances on entertainment shows like Strictly Come Dancing in 2007 and Celebrity Big Brother in 2018. This wasn't accidental. It was a calculated strategy to convert athletic fame into intellectual influence and maintain a platform for his developing social commentary. Simultaneously, Barnes transformed into a serious social commentator, appearing on political debate programmes like Question Time, where he articulated his developing philosophy about systemic bias and unconscious prejudice. He became a highly sought-after corporate speaker, with testimonials describing him as thought-provoking and quite provocative in discussions about racism, diversity, and unconscious bias in workplace environments. His 2021 book, The Uncomfortable Truth About Racism, codified his complex worldview, praised as eloquent and thought-provoking, while tackling colonialism's legacy in contemporary society and challenging readers to confront their own biases. Barnes's philosophy centres on what could be called the Barnes Doctrine, 4 interconnected arguments that fundamentally challenge conventional anti-racism approaches. First, he insists racism is a societal problem requiring societal solutions, not individual punishment of obvious bigots. Second, he dismisses symbolic gestures like taking the knee as performative allyship that creates a dangerous illusion of progress without changing material conditions for minorities. Third, he prioritises invisible bias over visible abuse, arguing that daily microaggressions cause more cumulative damage than stadium chants. Fourth, and most controversially, he argues everyone holds unconscious prejudices regardless of their background, because we're all products of the same biased society. However, Barnes's universal theory of prejudice created catastrophic problems when applied to groups he didn't belong to or fully understand. During Celebrity Big Brother in 2018, he stated that heterosexual men can feel uncomfortable around homosexual men for fear that a move will be made on them. While he intended this as sociological explanation of unconscious bias, it was widely interpreted as justification for homophobic attitudes. The crucial difference was his speaking position. When discussing racism, he spoke with moral authority from lived experience as a victim, but when discussing homophobia, he spoke from privilege as a heterosexual man analysing someone else's oppression without sufficient empathy or understanding. The pattern continued with other, deeply flawed comparisons that revealed his intellectual blind spots. In one interview, he attempted to equate Qatar's legal criminalisation of homosexuality with black people being stopped by police in England, completely overlooking vast differences in legal status, physical risk, and historical context. These false equivalencies revealed a fundamental flaw in his intellectual framework when applied beyond his personal experience of racism. The most serious controversy erupted from his social media comments about Jewish identity and the nature of anti-Semitic abuse. Barnes questioned whether you can racially abuse Jewish people, asking what race a black Jewish person belongs to, and whether people can change their race. Critics from the campaign against anti-Semitism compared this to Whoopi Goldberg's staggering ignorance of history. The problem was Barnes's complete failure to understand that anti-Semitism has historically functioned as racism, precisely because it racializes Jewish people regardless of their own self-definition or religious beliefs. The Nazi regime and other anti-Semitic movements throughout history defined Jewishness based on ancestry and blood, not faith or personal identity. This racialization was imposed by oppressors to justify persecution and genocide. By treating Jewish identity as a logical puzzle, rather than understanding the historical mechanism of their persecution, Barnes erased centuries of racialization imposed by those seeking to harm Jewish communities. His abstract, universalist deconstruction of race collided catastrophically with historical reality he simply didn't comprehend or research properly. These repeated intellectual missteps reveal the core paradox of John Barnes that defines his entire public legacy. The same psychological detachment that protected him from racism's emotional trauma also created massive blind spots when analysing other forms of prejudice he hadn't personally experienced. His theoretical framework, rooted in personal immunity to abuse and academic analysis of discrimination, becomes genuinely dangerous when applied to oppressions requiring different historical understanding and emotional intelligence he simply lacks. Barnes remains one of Britain's most essential yet contradictory public figures whose story continues to generate debate. His legacy combines genuine courage against racism with significant damage caused by ill-informed commentary on other prejudices. The icon and the controversialist aren't different people. They're both products of the same foundational experience that gave him intellectual confidence to deconstruct racism, but left him completely unprepared for battles requiring nuanced understanding of histories he never lived or properly studied. What do you think about this complicated legacy that spans both heroism and harmful ignorance? Share your thoughts in the comments below and let us know whether you think his contributions outweigh his mistakes.